sign.
All right, we're rolling.
I'd like to call to order the October 9th, 2019 meeting of the Calistoga Planning Commission. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Noted for the record that all commissioners are present with the exception of Chair Coates, who is excused tonight.
Okay. If you would all stand and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to public comments. Public comments is an opportunity to address the Planning Commission on items of interest to the public that do not appear on the agenda. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. The Commission cannot consider any issues or take any actions on items raised during public comments. Is there anyone out there who would like to speak? Please come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Carol Lee Arca, 1102 Pine Street. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to read this because I don't want to forget anything.
Please.
So I'm here tonight to express my displeasure with the city. My husband and I have had a license and a permit to have a bed and breakfast at 1102 Pine Street since the late 1980s. We've paid for a parking space around $1,500. We've paid our TOT taxes diligently and have paid for our licenses each year. We've recently rented out the rooms on a month-to-month basis. We're trying to do our part to help the locals that work in our community at various jobs because of the housing shortage. I was going into the City Hall the other day to pay for the October TOT, and I was told I didn't have to pay for it anymore because our license was revoked. I was unaware of it, and I did not know of the 160 days of not being used as a bed and breakfast would result in our license being taken away. We had no warning. It would have been nice to get a notice from the city that it was going to take place. We would like to keep this license in case we decide to sell our house. We feel that it would add value to it. I was told that I could apply for a new permit when we wanted to sell it for only $500 or whatever the price is when we decide to sell. $500 may sound like not a lot of money to some people, but when you're retired and on a fixed income, it is a lot of money. And it's the principle of not receiving a notice. We would like to request to all of you to please have our license reinstated, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know what the next step is after you hear this.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission? All right, seeing none. On the adoption of the agenda, I would like to propose that we, with the commission's approval, switch the agenda items for public hearings and put the Berry Street Bread and Breakfast second and the height increase issue first, if everyone has no objection. And if so, I'd like to make that motion myself.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? None. All right, so we will switch the two public items tonight. The communications and correspondence. Zach?
Yeah, we did receive one letter or email regarding what was, let's see if I can get this straight here. It was item G1, now to be item G2. That was in regard to the Berry Street Bed and Breakfast application. I believe you all received copies of that. There are copies available for the public on the back table. That's the only communication to report.
Okay, thank you. Consent calendar on the minutes. Has anyone any comments on the minutes from our last meeting? If not, I would take a,
I move that we approve the minutes.
okay, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Public hearings. So first, we will hear the height increase for an addition to a single-family home. This is use permit UP 2019-15, the consideration of a use permit application to allow an addition greater than 25 feet in height to a single-family home at 226 High Street. Zach, staff report?
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioners. The key issue with this application is that height limits for additions in the rural residential hillside district are limited to 25 feet unless approved by the Planning Commission via use permit. This is a property up on High Street. The house was built, roughly 10, 12 years ago. It's a 1,700 square foot single-family home with a detached garage. It's a partially sloped lot up on High Street. The proposed addition is a 600 square foot master suite. The construction would occur essentially downslope from the existing portion of the home. This is at the rear of the property. On the basement level, beneath the master suite, some new storage area would be added through the addition. We have reviewed it architecturally and feel comfortable with that. That being said, the proposal technically under our code is 29 and a half feet. And I want to go into that in detail just a little bit here. As I said, this project is zoned rural residential hillside. And as I said, additions to primary structures are limited to 25 feet in height. This kind of gets to how we actually measure height, and that can be complicated sometimes. For stepped, terraced, or segmented buildings, plans in your packet, you can see that this building is segmented. We do measure height individually for each segment of the structure. In this case, the new segment over a sloped portion of the property, the way we measure height is actually going to be 29 and a half feet. Now, that being said, apparently, if you were standing on the street, there are actually taller portions of this structure. So the reason we're bringing this to you today is this falls into a very interesting little section of our code where staff wasn't able to review and approve this, but we did want to get this to you because that's what the code requires. We did receive one letter from the property owner closest to the property and the addition saying that they had reviewed the plans and that they were in favor of it. We did, of course, send notices to all the surrounding property owners, did receive several phone calls and walked folks through it, but we have not received any negative comments at this point. This is exempt from CEQA, it's modifications to an existing structure. The applicant and their architect are here. They'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of staff?
Not right now.
The one letter, I am assuming that is the neighbor to the north, to the directly downhill
Yeah,
neighbor?
that's correct.
Who would be the most affected?
That would seem to be the case, yes.
Okay. One question I have is the right-of-way that is on the south by southwest property line. That is a existing public right-of-way? Is it undeveloped?
It's undeveloped, you're right. It's existing on the maps. We've had Public Works review this. It's pretty much, chances are non-existent that anybody would ever actually use it to build a road through there.
Okay. And the property that is immediately adjacent to that, which there is no structure shown, at least on your aerial.
If you're asking where it has access from?
Where it has access from, and is that the entirety of that piece of property undeveloped?
I believe it may have a home, but it's on the exact far opposite side. It's a pretty large parcel.
Okay.
And it's access from a completely different road network.
All right. There's a driveway, though, that is within the right-of-way. Do you know where that goes?
You know, I'm not 100% sure. The applicants might be able to answer that. They're probably more familiar with it than I am.
Okay, great. All right. Seeing no more questions, I will open the public hearing. If the applicant could come up, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Pinsky, who with my wife, Babette, own 226 High Street. And we've lived here for 10 years now. And we're now living here almost full-time. And we appreciate the opportunity to expand the house to fit all the stuff in that we've downsized elsewhere. To answer your immediate question about the right-of-way to the southwest, that leads up to the city water tank. And there's a driveway directly across for the house that's across that road. And to my knowledge, there's nothing above besides the water tank.
So that driveway is really just used by Public Works?
Correct.
Okay,
And some hikers sometimes.
all right.
I'm Eric Beckstrom. I'm the architect that's working with Stephen and Babette.
All right.
So, but I wanted to make, I don't know if you understand, so basically, it's a one-story flat-roofed house, and to expand, we're still keeping it one story, it's just the ground falls away, so it's like, you know, and you can't see it from any public way, so it's like, it's two-story just because right at the end of the house, it slopes down to that road we're speaking of, so it's kind of, I won't say innocuous, but it's almost like we're forced to do a two-story to keep it a one-story, you know, from the front, so that, well, you probably can see that from the drawing. So it's not any attempt to make it two-story, it's just the land is making that as such.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions, or?
Perhaps, does any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask it appears that the new addition is significantly taller than the adjacent spaces, at least looking at the north elevation, the windows are taller, the parapet is higher.
Yes.
Is the ceiling height
Yeah, it's
significantly
up by a foot, I think, or 2 feet, but the house actually, so it's one story. Then there's a step up to the existing master bedroom. There's two steps up.
4 steps
Yeah,
there.
and we're keeping that level and going over, and we're gonna make the ceiling like a foot higher, just so it doesn't look the exact same. But right behind the house is the two-story garage, which is it's actually probably like 10 foot taller. So it's almost like here's a one-story house, and then right behind is actually a two-story
Right.
building. So does that answer your question?
I was just curious if you were maintaining the same height and size of the rooms adjacent to it. There's the family room, the office room.
Yeah, so this is almost like, basically, I mean, I've also worked on lots of historical houses, which I mean, it's almost like what we're adopting is, and I'm gonna do a sidebar, but when you work on a historical structure, like a registered, any addition actually has to look different. Because if you don't, it's like ironic, we all think. And so, in a way, that's what this is doing. It's like, we're to have a little angle, just to give a little more design, if you will, and it was owner-derived, so we work together. It's a collaborative design process, so it's not like
Okay.
I like the design of it, I'm
Yeah.
just, and I agree that the cladding should be different, and
Yeah.
the little twerk and the twist
Right.
is interesting, and it
and that's
also
driven by, yeah,
points you to the mountain,
Sure.
takes advantage of the views.
Yes.
But in trying to prove the necessity of the
Yes.
variance, I'm just trying to to understand the height.
Yeah.
Is the height necessary?
the height really is derived, there's only like a foot and a half on the roof. The height is from the second floor, if you will. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'm seeing a difference between the
Yeah.
top
Can I
of
come over
the.
there?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm seeing, what's this dimension, right here?
That's about 2 feet, 1.5
Okay.
feet. And so, if you want to know the reality, I interpreted the height differently at first, so I'm like, I'm not using it. So, we designed it, and I work in a collaborative form, so it's not just like, I'm the architect my way. We work and we came up with this together. And then it was a way to distinguish it, and then we thought the grades would work, that we actually aren't going to be above the 25 foot. That's actually where we started on this. And then when we started measuring it, and then we worked with Zach, like, oh gosh, so that's kind of the history, the biography of it, you know what I'm saying? So if it's, I mean, as an architect or as a citizen, I would say it's such a nit. It's not like we're doing a 20-foot, you know, or 5-foot or 8-foot addition. It helps that addition look different if it's a foot taller, which is that, so it's whether,
Yeah,
I don't know
I
what.
think with Alyssa,
Yeah.
the net difference is about 2 feet, you mentioned,
Yes.
but the ceiling is a foot difference. Do you have a 12-inch parapet?
We have to do a parapet by code. I'd rather not, I tried to do it without a parapet. We have to do one by code to have a parapet for the roof, for that type of roof system.
But it sounds like you have a 12-inch parapet.
We have a 5.5 inch parapet. Sorry, we have the minimum parapet, which is
Okay.
5.5, or 6 inches finish.
All
I mean, now I'm getting into building code and not
Yeah,
planning, but the parapet has to be there by code because it's a flat roof, and the minimum's 6 inches.
okay.
So is that don't know if
I think you know where I'm
It's a lot
going.
of
Yeah,
download.
I think
Okay.
we understand now.
Yes.
Does anyone else have, Wally, any questions?
I thought I understood it until you all started asking those questions.
And, you know, given that it's on a downslope, it doesn't obscure the view of any other neighbors, I have no problem with the
Yeah.
approving that.
You can't see, it's, what's ironic, you can barely see it from their own property when you have to walk around, because it's on the end, so it's kind of a hidden even on their own
And
property.
it looks like a beautiful home.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's actually, it's a little sleeper, because it has this amazing view, but it's on this little lot right in town, so it's kind of unique in that way, these in-town lots.
Okay, that, I think, this answers our questions. If there's any more questions, we'll call you back.
Great, thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, if there are any comments?
No?
The reason I was asking that line of questioning is, my concern is not the immediate neighbors, because there's a lot of foliage, there's a lot of trees. I've been to the house down slope, and they don't seem to have a problem with it. I was trying to determine rural residential hillside properties. The reason the height restrictions are in place is to protect the areas across the valley from seeing this building. And normally a variance is granted, or an exception to the rules is granted because there is a need for it. And I understand completely the need to have the floor in plane with the rest of the house, and I'm on board with that. What I was trying to ascertain was if there was a need for the ceiling of this addition to be 2 feet taller than the rest of the house. Because you could be asking for 27 feet, but you're asking for 29 feet. And my concern is mostly just when you're coming down Mount St. Helena and you look across the valley, are you going to see this? Because we've got a couple of those houses that stand out.
Through the chair, if I may make just a quick clarification, this isn't a variance. I just want to be really careful that this isn't a variance. This is a use permit procedure. So the findings and everything that has to be shown are a little bit different than
Yeah,
a
this
variance.
is not a case of a hardship. It is permissible, but the one note, though, and I think Alyssa and I are, as usual, on the same page here. I would bring up the question, because you're changing materials, and on the note of everyone seeing the house from somewhere across the valley, typically in hillside work, it's been, I think, our experience is that if you ever want to really, really see a house on a hillside, paint it white. And if you really don't want to see the house, paint it darker. So I guess my question is, since you are changing materials on that second floor portion, will it be darker than the existing house?
Yes.
Okay. I would probably think that would go a long way to mitigate
Absolutely.
that, because that really is the only issue, is really not so much the height as what does everyone else have to look at, and if it sort of disappears, then it becomes a non-issue. All right, if there are no other comments, if someone has a motion to make?
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving use permit 2019-15 to allow a height increase for an addition to a single-family home at 226 High Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Passed unanimously. Congratulations.
All right.
Enjoy your home.
Great.
The next item is the Berry Street Bread and Breakfast. This is use permit 2019-14. This is the consideration of a use permit application to establish a 3-unit bed and breakfast inn at 1322 Berry Street. And before we start on this, Chairman Coates is not here tonight, and I have a proximity conflict. I live within 500 feet of the property, and so I will have to recuse myself. And with the commission's concurrence, I would like to hand the meeting over to Commissioner Cooper and let him carry on for the rest of the meeting.
Could we have a staff report?
Thank you, Commissioners. Key issues here, this is a resumption of a bed and breakfast use at a property that was used for the same purpose from 1986 to 2010. The only other really significant key issue here, it's the accommodation of increased parking demand by some new off-street parking that's planned. Some background here, that this is a 3,600 square foot structure at 1322 Berry. It was built in 1905 as a single-family residence. It's on a larger parcel, little under half an acre, located directly across the street from the Calistoga Elementary School. The property received approval in 1986 to operate as a bed and breakfast. It was known for a long time as the Brambles. In 2010, it ceased functioning as a bed and breakfast and reverted to use as a single-family home. The property's recently changed hands, and the new owners have applied to reestablish the bed and breakfast use. No significant modifications are planned to the structure, as it's already configured for bed and breakfast use, and hence this is not a design review as well. There are zoning code considerations. This is in the R3 multifamily office district. Bed and breakfasts are allowed in this district with a use permit that complies with all the relevant provisions of the bed and breakfast section of the municipal code. With that, the bed and breakfast, a few of those are, it must have a resident property manager, must comply with parking and spacing regulations. In the R3 zone, it must not include more than 3 rentable units, and no more than 49% of the space can be dedicated to the actual bed and breakfast units themselves. A couple things to address. Off-street parking for bed and breakfast inns is required at a rate of 1 parking space per rental room, plus 2 spaces for the manager. There's a site plan in your packet that shows what's proposed here. There are a few modifications to accommodate parking that the applicant is proposing. There are 2 existing off-street spaces for the owner or resident manager towards the rear. When this functioned as the Brambles or the old bed and breakfast, there was a kind of an informal gravel parking area. There was not room enough to turn a vehicle around, so I think what frequently happened, cars pulled in and they backed out on the street. We have code provisions that in the residential area for uses of this type, that we don't want a bunch of cars backing onto the street for obvious reasons. That can be very dangerous. In this case, it's also across from the elementary school. There's a lot of foot traffic, so that's an even heightened thing in this situation. With that, the applicant has worked with a designer to figure out a way to actually accommodate 4 parallel spaces. The 4 parallel spaces would allow cars to pull in, and then when they're exiting the property, to back out, make a turning motion, and pull out onto the street head first. That way they're able to look both ways, see who's coming down the sidewalk. And I think they're actually very fortunate that the property was big enough to accommodate that, or there might have been some issues in moving this application forward. With that, we have received 1 letter in opposition to this application. As I noted earlier, I believe you all received copies of that. There are copies available for the public in the back. And with that, the applicant is here, would be happy to answer any questions, as would I. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from commissioners or of staff? This is a public hearing. The applicant is up here, Mr. Satui.
My name is Dario Satui. I reside at 399 North St. Helena Highway in Calistoga. This is a beautiful Victorian, built in 1886. It's been set up as a bed and breakfast, and we'd like to resume that. We intend to furnish it with nice antiques and keep the property really nicely. I know you received a letter in opposition. I can say this on our behalf. I bought recently, within the last year and a half, a retirement home just outside of St. Helena, and I bought another home, and we have already created 14 separate units that we will rent to our employees at subsidized rates. So I know it's not Calistoga, but we're trying to do our part to get people off the roads and to stop living in Fairfield and Santa Rosa and having these long commutes. So we're making an effort to. We also pay to ride share, to take the bus. We pay our employees for all of these things. But in any event, so So we're trying to do our part. What else? And in essence, not only will you not lose any residential housing, we'll either have one manager or a couple, so you will have one or two new people living upstairs. So at least you don't lose anybody, and in a sense, we create housing. I want to close by saying I'm adamantly against the Yellow Rose development. If we have enough traffic, we have enough congestion, we want to keep our small town character. I think it's horrible, 168 units, right, I'm upset about the place across the street from Solage. But, slowly, we're losing what we have here in Napa County, and it's always vineyards being taken out. I hope that and we do need worker housing, that we infill in the places we have in the city so people often can walk to work and not drive to work. So I just wanted to state that. I know it's not apropos, perhaps, because I'm not talking about my bed and breakfast.
Hold on one sec. Did anybody have questions for the applicant? Is it safe to, when you purchased property, did you purchase under the assumption that it should be able to go back as a B&B? Was that the intent?
No, and my fiance talked me into it. I could have gone either way. I love the property. It's a beautiful, old historic property. And so I bought it, and she influenced me with to run as a B&B.
Well, I appreciate what you've done to help alleviate the problem of worker housing. It's a huge issue with hospitality, as you know. So I appreciate everything that you've done. So thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Does anybody else have comments?
Donna Higgins, I'm the one that sent your letter that you hopefully all read, but I just want to talk a little bit about this. I am asking you to deny the permit for this property and keep it a permanent residence. And we've gone over the issue how it's located in an R3 multiple family district zone area. And if anything, this site should be encouraged to become a duplex or triplex to ease the housing shortage in the city and conform to the R3 zone definition. I know the Planning Commission has in the city municipal code, you can grant a use permit for a B&B. That's one of the privileges you have. But I feel to take away available housing from locals and dedicate this to a tourist business goes against what the R3 zone was designed for. The Planning Commission made it very clear to the neighbors on 4th Street how desperate housing was needed when the large Washington Street complex submitted by Dmitry Lakiovanovic, came before the commission in 2018. Our neighborhood pleaded not to let this come in, not because of the shortage, not because of it was because of the grand size of this complex that was to come in. We had to submit a appeal to the Planning Commission because of the parking issue. And so it was so directed toward us that the intent of the R3 multiple family district is to increase the diversity and affordability of housing stock in Calistoga by providing housing close to downtown services and to provide convenient access to professional offices for residents and businesses while ensuring the care is taken to preserve the character of existing neighborhoods. We were told how people within Calistoga could ride their bikes, walk to work, not take out cars, and almost in essence reprimanded that we would dare think that could be used for a smaller site or a smaller population. So to take away an area that this could be house more people instead of the resident, and I realize you're going to get tow tax from this area. That's obvious. It's a business with inside. But if you'll notice, even in a 2-block area from where you are on Berry Street to where we are on Lake Street, there's a bed and breakfast that was up for sale right now at quite a large, I think, price tag. So it's not that we don't have enough B&Bs. You know, we're not desperate for tourism, I don't think. And I would like to commend the first woman who stood up and said that she had the option before and she went back to renting it to local people rather than keeping up her bed and breakfast. I commend her for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach, do you have any comments on the zoning? Oh, yes, please.
To my knowledge, we've had no opposition from the immediate neighbors. So I am not 100% sure, but nobody's opposed. I don't know where this lady lives, but at least from the immediate neighbors, no opposition.
One question. In your experience, if you had to rent this property as a single-family home to a single tenant, do you have an estimate of what that rent might be per month? Of course, as a right, of course.
I really don't know.
I'd expect it to be pretty expensive.
Yeah,
So it
probably
would be tough for a
expensive.
hospitality
Yeah.
individual to be able to afford a home like.
And primarily, we would rent this if we're approved tonight to our wine club members from both wineries and at a discounted rate. Hotels are often expensive in the Napa Valley, like
Right.
everything else. But it would also be for the general public as
Okay.
well.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Okay, with that, we'll close the public comment section. Comments between commissioners?
Did you want to address anything?
Yeah, it's, I don't think you heard anything inaccurate in public comment, either from the applicant or anyone else who's testified. It is zoned R3. R3 is intended, primarily as a multifamily office district. As noted, there are other uses that are allowed via use permit, subject to certain conditions. I would note that nothing in the current proposal would actually preclude them, should they choose to add some multifamily units on the property at a later date. It's big enough, it's tight, you'd have to accommodate parking, but that's theoretically possible. I think that's about it.
Okay, and given the precedence has been set for use as a B&B, and in the past it has had a permit like that, I'd entertain a motion?
Let me just ask one question. I didn't. Is it correct that none of the nearby neighbors have expressed any opposition?
I honestly, I apologize. I don't know where Mrs. Higgins lives, how close she is, but at least to my knowledge, none of the neighbors immediately next door or across the street have expressed opposition.
Okay.
Okay.
Question.
Yes, they were sent. And we received several phone calls in response to public notices that were sent.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving use permit 2019-14 to allow the operation of a 3-unit bed and breakfast at 1322 Berry Street.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Congratulations. Thank you. Matters initiated by commissioners. Have any
None from me.
extra matters? Okay.
I just had one thought. We see a lot of projects go through in the course of a year or so, but we never get any sort of feedback what happened to them. It'd be sort of interesting from time to time, if it's not too much of a burden, but, every 6 months or a year, say, well, this one is not going forward for the following reasons, or this one is, whatever, having such and such problems. Because in my mind, I kind of think they're done,
All the work we've done.
Yeah, and then
you
we
know,
find
what are
out
the
maybe
results of
9
it?
months later, it never happened.
Right. Yeah, that would be
Just a
good.
thought.
That is actually very timely. I'm happy you mentioned that. At the next council meeting, we are going to be giving, and by we I mean me, giving the planning and building department's annual report. And so we'll talk about the status of some projects. But if the commission would like it, whenever your next meeting may be scheduled, we could probably do a little report on that as well. I think
That'd
that's a
be great.
great
It'd be
idea.
nice to
Yeah,
have,
that'd
yeah.
be really good. Good to hear. Excellent. Can we have director's report?
Yeah, nothing to report except that at this time, we do not have any items for you queued up for October 23rd, so it is our recommendation that you cancel that meeting.
We'll take that under advice. Do we have a motion for adjournment? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you very much.